All business is a relationship business. And if the relationship between your CEO and COO or co-founders is dysfunctional, well, no strategy or spreadsheet in the world is going to save you. That's a truth bomb you're about to get from today's guest, Dr. Patti Ann Tublin. In today's episode of the Mike Method, we're diving into the hard stuff, trust, power dynamics, and the kind of conflict that can quietly rot an organization from the inside out. And we're doing it with none other than Dr. Patti Ann Tublin, a world-class expert in emotional intelligence, communication, and human behavior. She's not only the founder of the Relationship Toolbox and a high-performance executive coach, she's also the author of 2 best-selling books, a globally recognized speaker, and the host of the Dr. Patti Ann podcast, where she's interviewed legends like the co-founder of Netflix, the president of Starbucks, and NBA life coaches. But today, she's here with us, and what she brings is gold. We talk about why 50-50 partnerships are a myth, how to build ideological conflict without descending in a personal conflict, and what happens when founders avoid the real conversation, only to rely on contracts after trust has already eroded. Dr. Patti Ann breaks down how CEOs and COOs can stay aligned, the subtle signals that culture is breaking down, and how leadership actually requires emotional maturity, not just a big title. We explore what it means to allow someone else's truth, how to lead with humanity, and why the best organizations aren't families, they're high-performing teams that take care of each other. If you're a founder, an executive, or just someone who knows the great leadership starts with great relationships, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Patti Ann, I really appreciate you making time to be on the podcast today.
Thank you. And thank you so much for that great introduction. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, and so anybody who's listened to that introduction is like, oh my God, this woman is impressive. So it's kind of tough because you've done a lot, and between, your degrees, your certifications, incredible amount of personal experience and wisdom that you've gained through the work that you do. I'm sure people, when they read your bio online or just listen to your bio, are like, what is it exactly that she does? So I'd love to hear it from your own words. Like when you describe who you are in the world and how you bring value to the world, like, what do you want people to know about you?
Okay. So before I tell you what I do, may I tell you what I believe?
Yeah. Start.
Okay.
Yeah. You know what? I love that. Let's do that.
Okay. So I believe that all business is a relationship business.
Okay.
And all businesses reflect the relationships of the founder and the leadership team. I fix all the dysfunctional relationships in professional and personal lives.
Okay. You fix all of the dysfunctional relationships in business and
Right.
personal lives. And
Right.
when you do that, what do you see occur differently in those organizations?
Okay, so what happens is any aspect of a business is not running well.
Yeah.
If any relationship, especially a leadership relationship, is not working well, if they're not getting along for whatever reason it might be, it's a little bit like a family. When mommy and daddy are fighting, everything else just seems that much more difficult. Even if you think the kids don't know you're fighting, they know that. So in a company, especially with entrepreneurial companies, when the CEOs and the COOs are not aligned to, the term today is the North Star, if they're not aligned to the vision or the purpose, everybody's rowing the boat in a different direction. So it's not as effective as it should be. It's not as efficient as it should be. It costs you time, energy, money, and talent. And the culture this is a little extreme, but sort of kind of rot from within. And then no matter how great your business is, no matter how great your product is that you want to sell, no matter how hard you work, no matter how smart you are, if those relationships are dysfunctional, especially at the CEO, COO, senior leadership position, you will not be as successful as you otherwise could be. The business might go out of business. The best example I can give you, and I think you're mature enough as I am to remember this, when Steve Jobs and Wozniak, as best friends, started Apple, the company it was Apple. When that relationship was fractured and went through its decline, what happened? Woz was thrown out, left the company, and Steve Jobs, this was the first time back then, the founder of a company was thrown out of their own company.
That's right.
Now, yes, he was brought back in, but that was all a reflection of the relationship between the CEO and the COO. And that's what's at risk. And it It's not as unusual as you would like to think it is.
It's what came up for me as you were saying that is there's this show that's also, I think we both of the age where we may have watched the show called Super Nanny. And Super
Never,
Nanny.
I have to admit, I never watched it. I wasn't a big
Well,
TV person, but I know the
yeah,
premise. Yeah.
yeah. And
Was
so
that with Fran? What's her name? The girl from Brooklyn?
no,
Fran?
that was the different nanny one.
Okay.
This is like a what's it called, like a real life sort of thing. So they would send Super Nanny in because the parents said that the kids are unmanageable, and
Okay.
Super Nanny would come in and spend about 50 minutes of the hour-long show working with the parents,
Sure.
and then spend 10 minutes with the kids, and
Right.
somehow magically everything worked out okay. And then my other example was the dog whisperer, Cesar Millan. He would spend all the time with the dog owner, and then he'd spend a little bit of time with the dog. But the problem was the dog. So
Right. Because what happens is the inmates are running the insane asylum.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that's what came
Yeah.
up for me is this just example when you talk about if there's dysfunction between the CEO and the COO and their relationship, you'll see that reflected in the culture of the organization. I mean, we've seen that. Anytime they're like, oh, we don't have accountability at our manager level. And I'm like, they're like, so is that the director's problem? And I'm like, ooh, it's probably higher than that. I mean, let's go all the way up to the CEO and the executive team. Does the CEO do a really good job of holding the executives accountable and having difficult conversations and leading in an appropriate way based on where each of those executives is at? If the answer is no, I'm like, that's where the problem lies. And,
Right.
otherwise it's like, how did you manage to hire, you have 150 managers and every single one of them is unaccountable. So that's like that's unlikely that might occur. In the
Right.
hiring process.
And also not just the COO and the CEOs, but when there's
Yeah.
co-founders, what
Right.
happens is what people do is it's just like a marriage, whereas when
Sure.
you get together, it's lollipops and rainbows and
Yeah.
la-di-da-da, and you think you're going to do it better than everybody else, and you don't have a prenup. It's like a marriage.
Sure.
Right. And it works until it doesn't. Well, that's what co-founders do. And now all of a sudden you're at a crossroads and somebody wants out or you want to go in a different direction. And then how does that align or not align? What's the ramifications of that for the company? So there's a lot of different relationships within a business that can become dysfunctional.
Mhm.
And it doesn't necessarily mean anybody is quote unquote bad or doing things wrong. But many times the terms haven't been laid out to begin with. It's just like you hire for a position. You have to have an accurate job description. You have to make sure you have the right person in the right seat. And
Right.
usually the competency is easy. It's the
Mhm.
character that everybody forgets to interview for because it's rare. You think about Enron.
Yeah.
Those guys were smart, but it was the character that was the issue. And I could go on and on. And I'm sure you remember Enron too.
I read the
For the
book,
people on
actually.
the call that don't know, Google it.
Yeah, and read the book.
When
The
we're
book is
done.
fascinating. The Enron story that was written
Yeah.
is an incredible story of how culture
Hubris.
can go. Yeah, hubris and culture can go
Yeah, my
sideways.
husband was in the oil industry, so he wasn't surprised at all. He's like, yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I wonder, my curiosity goes to the place of thinking about what are the types of things that you see. So, well, one, before I go there, I want to say contracts. Like you talked about having the contract in place. I know that when founders have dropped back to the contract place, things have really blown apart because they are hoping that a legal document is somehow going to save the dysfunction in their relationship. And the reality is that when they've gotten to that place, if they're relying on a piece of paper, I can tell you I've read, I don't know how many shareholder agreements in my career. I've had them in place and you think you covered everything. And then the situation happens and you need to rely on the agreement. And it's like, oh, but this one unique scenario that we're currently in, this agreement doesn't work for. And it's happened countless times. Relying on the agreement isn't great. So let's go back to where the challenges are.
Hang on, let me,
please.
I think I want to let me answer what you addressed something that you just were alluding to.
Yeah.
Just like a marriage.
Right.
If you have to worry about the fact that you think your partner might be having an affair,
yeah,
you already have a problem.
Sure.
Right? So in a business, if you're going back to the contract, you already have a problem, regardless of what you're going to the contract for, right? Many times what happens is it has to do with the direction that the company is going in. Like, what's the why? And I'll give you an example. You have a lot of money that you aren't expecting. You have a profit. Let's say you're doing well, right? And the CEO wants to increase the product line. Go figure another product to sell. And the COO or the CFO wants to double down on what you already have and expand the reach of what already exists. How and where do you deploy the money?
Mm-hmm.
But really what's going on there is you're not really fighting about the money. What you're really fighting about is who has the power, who gets to make the decisions. So don't lose sight of the forest from the trees. So
Right.
many times there's that piece, and that usually also coincides with, depending upon how far down we are in the relationship, trust. Has the trust started to erode? Right? I'm not so sure I trust you're making the right decision. I'm not so sure I'm trusting your judgment. Doesn't necessarily mean trust from a stealing perspective, although it can be that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if I no longer trust your decision-making ability, now we have a real serious conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to have the conversation about the real issue, which is the trust, not what's masquerading as the issue, because then it will be a game of whack-a-mole and it will just keep coming up in different areas.
And so let's back up even before that occurs. So
Okay.
before the lack of connection around vision or strategy occurs, because I've seen that happen with founders. It's hard with founders because, particularly if they're 50-50 partners, because the reality is that,
Right. Which, by the way, there never should be 50.
yeah,
Ever with anything, because life does not work 50-50. I went to college for 13 years. I never took a course on fairness. There's always got to be a 51%. But anyway, go ahead.
I have wholeheartedly agree with you and have only
Right,
ever,
because now what you're doing is the problems that are coming up later,
yeah,
you've already hashed out.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And if you do
You
50-50,
preempted.
yeah, if you
Yeah.
do 50-50, and I 100% agree with you, in partnerships I've been in and in ones I've seen through the Entrepreneurs Organization,
Stalemate.
you reach a stalemate and there's no agreement I've ever seen. The only place you can
Well,
do
then you
it,
go to
shotgun.
arbitration,
Yeah,
right?
you go to
Then you go to
arbitration, you have a
arbitration, right?
shotgun, and that process can drag on for years. It's
Forever.
so
Yeah.
painful. It's damaging to your culture.
Yep.
And the reality is, even if one person wants to go and the other person wants to stay, it's still really hard. And you can't
Right.
make any decisions
But
about the
how do
business.
you do it? How do you do it?
It's just, I've never
Yeah.
seen a good way, honestly. It just looks painful. So I agree with you that control needs to be rested with one person. The other opportunity is where you have a CEO and a COO, and people might be listening and thinking, well, clearly the CEO is the one in charge. But the reality is that even though the CEO might be the person in charge of setting the vision, the COO/president may actually have everyone in the company, save for a few executives, reporting into that person. And they actually have operational control of the day-to-day business and a lot of influence and persuasion around where that business goes. And so the two of them getting into conflict can have a CEO speaking about vision and strategy and where you want to go, and then the president and COO operating the business in a very different way. And if they're not aligned, that literally looks like mommy and daddy fighting to the people that are working in the organization. And it puts everyone else in a very difficult position.
And many times what happens is that somebody's going behind the other person's back,
Right.
right? So, and that's where the COO and the CEO, if one person is going to either one of those parties about
Yeah.
the other,
Right.
what you absolutely have to do, it's okay to have conflict. Two people are
Sure.
inevitably going to have conflict. And even if you're 51-49%,
Yeah.
you can operate with each other under
Yes.
the auspices of 50-50, right? It's imperative that if somebody comes complaining to the CEO about the COO, all the CEO says is, I can see you feel strongly about this. You need to go talk to him. Right, you need to, and you funnel each other back. Right, you don't allow that backstabbing or back channeling, is what they say. Right, because now you're fracturing the authority and the effectiveness of that other person, and many times that happens. It gets you into conflict. But if you have a CEO, right, and he or she understands her unique ability, and let's say
Yeah.
there's three of them, right? You also have to bring a little bit of humility to the situation, right? So you can say to the COO, I'm not so sure I want to go in this direction. As a matter of fact, I don't. And these are the reasons why. Give me your reasons why you feel differently, as evidenced by, not
Right.
because I feel,
Yeah.
as evidenced by. And then you have somebody in that position for a reason. They're doing the day to day, the hands on, they see the obstacles. You run with it. And then you have check in points consistently after X amount of times. The numbers don't lie. So, all right, we'll try this for whatever reasonable amount of time 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever. And if we haven't reached this stage by then, we'll reverse course or we'll change it or we'll do it my way or you'll be out of a job,
Right.
whatever it is. Right. But you have the person take ownership if you are the CEO, because you're the CEO, you have certain abilities, but you might not have the same genius that the COO has running the day to day.
And that's fairly typical. There's a system called EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating
Yes, yes,
System.
yes, rocks, the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things
Yeah.
they talk about there is, the CEO's job is vision, strategy, culture. That's the job of the CEO, right? Doing the big deals that the CEOs has the network and the capacity to be able to get done, looking for new rivers of cash, new opportunities for the business. And the
Mhm.
COO, or what they call an integrator in the concept of the EOS, they're responsible for running the business day to day and
Making it happen,
yeah,
making
and
it
taking
happen.
that strategy and actually
Yeah.
making it part of the operations of the
Right.
business. And that's a really good partnership, but inherently it can create conflict because they have very different ways of seeing the world and
Sure.
they're very different skill sets, and they need to appreciate each other's skill sets, but there needs to be a really healthy ideological conflict between the two of them. And where I've seen breakdowns is where that ideological conflict all of a sudden becomes interpersonal conflict. And now it's more about, well, I don't like this other person versus
Right.
I don't like their view of what they think is best for the business.
Right. Well, that's where the trust comes in.
Right.
Right. And again, you said something. I just lost it as you were speaking about the two different directions. It happens a lot,
Yeah.
but that is where you have to have the conversation.
Yeah.
You have and it's nice to like everybody. I'm working with the firm now, right? But the culture is becoming toxic where
Yeah.
the feelings are it's become toxic, right? And I'm like, listen, you guys don't have to like each other. You
Yeah.
don't have to go out for drinks on Friday. They don't have
Yeah.
to be a BFF. But
Yes.
you have to respect each other and you have
Yes.
to get the job done. Right? You all have to be adults. But to go back to the marriage, there are things where a couple will feel very differently about, say, parenting and
Sure.
money, right? But you have to be able to agree to disagree respectfully. And unlike the political climate today, just because you disagree with me, Mike, doesn't mean you're stupid or an
Right.
idiot or
Yeah.
a fascist, right? And vice versa. It
Yeah.
just, and the difference of the worldview is, in fact, the strength of the partnership.
Hmm.
So you can't lose sight of that.
There's a wonderful book called How to Change the World. And I'm forgetting the name of the author. We'll drop it in the show.
And I don't know if I'm familiar with that. Yeah, I don't think
Yeah,
I know
and
that
the,
book.
the author worked with a lot of the immunity to change work, Keegan Leahy's work out of Harvard. And
Hmm.
one of the things that she realized, which you just touched on, is that the development of a leader needs to move to a place that the highest place they can move to is self-actualized. And in a
Yes.
self-actualized leader, they would not say, I'm part of this religious group or I believe in this political philosophy. They would say, I understand the gray. I have
Hmm.
opinions and I have very strong convictions, but they're loosely held because if you give me new information, I need to integrate that information in. And they're more comfortable understanding that the world is not really polarized, that most of it's actually quite gray. There are some things around morality, like we probably shouldn't be killing each other all the time. It's probably not good, right? Like,
Yeah.
we should probably take care of children and the elderly, like the
It
things
doesn't
that we
really
can all,
solve anything.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, we probably, the planet, we've got one, we should maybe take care of it. Like things that we probably should do these things, right? But outside of that, most things are actually live in the gray, and
Right.
that leaders that go to that place of understanding that, man, I may have a strong opinion about something, but I need to hold on to it loosely because I don't have all the facts. My worldview is not the total worldview. It's a worldview, and it is informed and biased by my life experience. And another person who may have a different personality, a different style, a different upbringing, a different educational background, a different life experience, different career experience is going to look at the world differently than I do. And I need to be able to have the humility and the curiosity to deeply understand their point of view. I don't have to agree with it when they're done, but I need to be able to have the strength of character, which you referenced earlier, to be able to understand why they think that and to deeply listen to them.
Okay, so several things. I hope I can remember everything I want to say. Yes, yes, and yes. Okay. In terms of truth, right? You referenced truth. Truth is subjective. The
Sure.
only objective truth I would say, truth is religion aside, right?
Yeah,
Let's put religion aside.
for sure.
Okay. But your truth is based upon your perception of the situation and
Right.
your background. My truth is based on the same thing. Now, I've done this exercise with actually Cameron Herold, and he
Yeah.
loved it, where I held up a beach ball, like the
Yeah.
beach ball with the 8 colors.
Right.
And if I show it to you, you see
Yeah.
red, green, and orange.
Yeah.
You will die on that hill. That's your
Absolutely.
truth.
Yeah.
And I see white, yellow, and blue.
Right.
And it's true.
Yeah. For both of us.
But if you turn the ball, now you can see all the colors, right? When there is a breakdown in trust, when there is a breakdown in truth, if you can be open to the fact that it's not a winner take all, it's not a zero-sum game,
Right.
right? But to be able to do that leads into the next thing that you said, which is living in the gray. You mentioned the woman from Harvard. That really goes back to the basic, everybody's just recycling what, for the most part, what we know. The
Yeah.
basic tenet of psychologists, which my background is a clinical psychologist, Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization. So from a leadership perspective, right, like I do leadership based on neuroscience and soft skills. From a leadership perspective, you can only lead to the level that you're self-actualized. So John Maxwell talks about the law of the lid. I
Right.
can't lead you past where I am.
Sure.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
In terms of the gray, the way I look at it is I can feel strongly about my opinion, and you can feel strongly about your opinion. It's not even understanding the gray. I look at it from an emotional intelligence perspective, because to me, everything goes to soft skills.
For
An
sure.
emotional intelligence perspective of you have to allow for the gray. I might never understand it.
Right.
Never. Ever, ever in a million years, there's some things I'll never understand,
Yes.
but I have to allow it
Oh, I love that.
and respect it.
Yes.
So for some reason, as you were speaking, I was talking about that, the truth, the emotional intelligence, and allowing for the differences.
I love the allowing, because it's kind of a step below understanding. And I've never heard anyone make that distinction before, but that is a very powerful distinction to say, I may never understand that, but I need to allow that that's okay. Like that's okay in the
Or it
world,
exists.
or
It
that it exists.
exists.
Yeah. Just acknowledge the existence of it, allow it, because otherwise I'm going to take, I could build up resentment. I could have negative energy to that. And that's not productive. That's not serving
Well,
me.
it's also my lack of understanding
Right.
might be more a reflection of my level of development and my lack of
Right.
self-actualization. And
Right.
now that is impeding what we're trying to repair.
Oh, I love that. That distinction is important. I guess if I was listening to this right now as a listener, my first thought would be, well, how do I prevent all this in the first place? Like, what do I need to do as co-founders, or what do I need to do as a CEO, COO? Like, what are the practices that we could put into place that would build that trust and would protect us or set us up so that when we are in conflict, we have tools. Like how do we prevent getting to that place? And if we get to that place, like, what do we do?
Okay, well, you will get to that place because it's human nature.
Right.
You put two people in a room, and who you are when you start the relationship is not who you will be the next day.
Right. We're
It's
always
just the
changing.
law, right? Like the expression, you never step into the same river twice,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah, I
Because
love
it's
that.
always full. It's
Yeah.
also us.
Yeah.
So first of all, especially as entrepreneurs, like we're all a little guilty of the shiny object syndrome, right? I've worked with CEOs, COOs, and co-founders that have literally, you and I have had a longer conversation than they had before they decided, because they were sitting next to each other at an event,
Yeah.
to go into business together.
Okay.
That is like marrying somebody after the first date.
Right. You wouldn't do that.
You might be infatuated, the hormones might be flying. You might feel really good. You might be impressed that this person is smart. Maybe they did three other businesses and had a great exit, but you haven't done your due diligence, right? So someone who lives and dies with emotions, you still have to do some type of cognitive due diligence based upon what their character is, and then understand don't marry up in a business with someone who has the skill sets that mirror yours. You want someone that's different.
Mhm.
And then you have to have the difficult conversation. And I have a list somewhere. Actually, I could have got it for you guys. When we disagree, how will we resolve conflict? If you're a finance genius, right, and I'm a marketing genius, you know what? If it has to do with the numbers, Mike, you get veto. If it has to do with marketing, I get veto, right? And yes, there are certain, you can't predict for everything, but there are certain common denominators that will appear in every relationship, in every business. And you try to go for those and what and how that has been handled in the past. So, for example, if I'm going to go into business with you, Mike, and you've been in business with five other people, or you've been in the CEO with five other people, and you don't talk to any one of them today, that might be all I need to know to not partner with you.
Right.
But guess what? People don't ask that. Or if they do, you go on a tirade of how the other person is a jerk, and maybe they are, and maybe they have a reputation, but the other guy's a jerk, and the other one, and the other one. So you have to try to look for patterns, and then each of you go to someone that you trust that knows you well and share with them. I'm thinking about partnering with, I'm thinking about going into business with, or we're together, we're building out our leadership team. Same process, right? Use yourself. And then since we all have our blind spots, ask the people that you trust. I have an executive coach, CEO. His wife told him, do not pick this guy to be your co. Do not. He was enthralled with the guy. The guy had like a big personality. The guy was the biggest pain in his ass. He came to regret it, right? Because he wouldn't listen to the people, because we all have our blind spots. So be aware of our blind spots, but don't expect ourselves to see them.
Mhm.
That's where you go to somebody else that knows you really, really well. Does that answer your? I don't know.
Yeah, it does. And I guess the second question I
And then
have is,
also one other thing in terms of
yeah,
have frequent, and you can determine once a week, once a month, twice a month, certainly more than once a quarter. Have check-ins with each other. The Alan Mulally story from Ford, red light, green light, yellow light. What's
yeah,
going well? Everyone wants to tell you what's going well. Don't spend a lot of
right.
time on that. What's going not well, and where are you stuck? What are you having a hard time with? And that can be the actual stuff of the business or the relationships. And
Mm.
9 out of 10 times it's the relationships that's really going to be worth the conversation.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
That was actually the
Okay.
next question I was going to ask you was exactly that, how to stay current with each other. And I love that, the red light, green light, yellow light
Yellow.
approach
Yeah.
of checking in and
You've
being
heard
able.
that before, right? From Alan
Mhm.
Mulally?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. Actually, one of our clients uses that with his team.
I use that with all my clients,
Oh,
or
okay,
for all
great.
their teams. So NVIDIA, the owner, the founder, whatever he is, Jensen, is that? Yeah. So I heard that if he doesn't do one-on-ones, if there's not like a specific topic, I vehemently disagree with that.
Yeah, same.
Because now he's just looking at the person as, now look, the guy's not calling me for advice, right? He knows what
Sure.
he's doing. But I think that's being way too transactional, whereas
Yeah.
I always want to go for the relational, right?
I
Right.
think that's a
Sometimes people will cancel meetings because there's no problems. So
Yeah, I think that, and if the thing is, if all your meetings or one-on-ones are about problems, and that's the sole
that's a
content,
problem.
it's kind of, well, not only is it a problem, but it's like that's your life. Like your life is doing problem solving. Like
Mhm.
I think no business I've ever seen has problem solved their way to greatness.
Right. And I think I'm sure you're familiar, and the listeners are familiar with Simon Sinek.
Yeah,
Sales numbers are down,
yeah,
right? So you could go to the sales guy, hey, sales numbers are down. If you don't get up, you're out. Like the guy knows that, right? So
yeah,
what's going on,
yeah.
right? What your numbers are down. This isn't like you. And then you might find out they have a sick child. They're going through a rough patch in their marriage, right? As a leader, you have to lead with humanity.
Hmm.
These are people. You have an inordinate amount of responsibility when
Hmm.
you're the CEO, the COO, the executive of anything,
Hmm.
and you have their lifestyle in your hands. And one of my two books is the second title was the best-selling book, Money Can Buy You Happiness. And I
Hmm.
got ragged on for the title. And I said, it's like Zig Ziglar said, it's like
Yeah.
air, try living without it, right?
Yeah.
Money's really important. It gives you choices, it gives you freedom. It's not the
Yes.
be all and end all, but
No.
don't neglect the fact and don't minimize the fact that that's a big role in
Yes.
your employee's life. And treat them well, pay them well. I
Yeah.
am so proud of so many of the people I work with. They pay everybody a little bit above the pay scale. Good for them. They
Yeah.
want them to have that good life.
Yes.
It's all about the relationship. That's at the core. It's not just your customers, right? It's the people around you. Get the best people, treat them well. They will make you smell like roses.
You bring up an interesting
I get
point.
so passionate about that.
Well, I love it. No, 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 no. It's just you brought up a really interesting point connected to emotional intelligence when you brought up motivations. Is it's one of the 5 tenets in one of the models of emotional intelligence. And I think the thing I'm reflecting on is we have a model we call performance-based leadership, which basically helps leaders diagnose the style of leadership they need to use based on the motivation and competency of the person that they're working with on that
Hmm.
task. Very
Hmm.
similar to situational leadership. One of the challenges is that, and you brought it up, is that say using your sales example from Simon Sinek, is that people will look at a high performer or somebody that has performed consistently who isn't performing, and they'll first go to a place of competence.
Yes.
But that doesn't make sense because you've seen the habits, patterns, and behaviors that have made that person successful in the past. So it's probably not a competence issue. It's more likely it's a motivational issue. And
Hmm.
motivation, right? As Daniel Pink and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi figured out, intrinsic motivation is based on mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And if somebody loses one of those things, the ability to master their craft, the autonomy to do it in the way that they think is best for them, and then purpose, they don't really see a purpose to their work, then you'll start to see a slide in motivation. The other thing can be, as you referenced, there's things going on at home that are clouding that person's judgment or making it difficult for them to concentrate at work. I had on a guest that is focused on supporting women, and she talked about menopause and how it's this silent thing that's going on for a great deal, perimenopause and menopause, and we don't talk about it. And yet, the women who are experiencing it have come forward to her and said, like, it's affecting my motivation, it's affecting my judgment, and yet it's this like hidden thing we don't want to talk about. And so I think not honoring the life scenario, whatever it happens to be, for men, for women, for somebody that's non-binary, doesn't matter, whoever they are, their life circumstances could be affecting their motivation at work. And now all of a sudden we're looking at their competency and wondering, like, why aren't they doing the things anymore? Do we need to like double down on telling them you should make more sales calls? Like, no, that's not what's driving the issue is not their habits. The issue is, as you say, goes back to emotional intelligence and motivation and our empathy as a leader to say, hey, what's really going on for you? And like, how can I help?
Well, it's, otherwise it's like, the beatings will continue until morale improves. And Mike, if it's a competency issue,
Yeah,
that's on you as the leader, that
sure.
you put the wrong person in the wrong seat,
Yeah, for sure.
right? Usually, and this is where it comes to the culture,
Right.
right? There was a time when I couldn't say this without getting like blackballed, whatever. But, no one ever told Jack Welch from GE what he didn't want to hear, right?
Right.
I had lived in Connecticut, so I done some work there. Nobody
Yeah,
told him what, later on in his life, he talked about leadership, which is not the way that he led, right?
sure. Yeah.
Same with when the Fords were running the Ford
Yeah.
company. Nobody told the Fords anything they didn't want to hear. If you have that type of culture, you will never get to why performance is really down. And
Right.
you will double down on beatings will continue until morale improves. Is to go full circle from what I said earlier, all
Yeah.
businesses are relationship businesses.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I know plenty of people that have worked for CEOs where it's like, oh, they're a family man. I'm like, yeah, they're family, but nobody
Yeah.
else's,
Right.
right?
Yeah, for
It's a
sure.
and that's a challenge. So you really need to know what somebody cares about, what makes them tick, what's going on in their life within an appropriate level,
Mhm.
right? Like you shouldn't be a look. So what the woman that worked about the menopause is
Yeah.
saying, like, I can remember a time, I will date myself now, where I would tell women never call in sick and tell them that your kid is sick.
Yeah.
Never,
Right.
never. Tell them you had a flat tire. This is a terrible thing to say. Now, you can't do that because they'll ask you for a picture of the flat tire, right? But you were not allowed to be a person. And as a woman with a child, it's like, oh, if you call in sick because your kid is sick, then they question your allegiance and your loyalty to the firm. That's ridiculous.
There's a motherhood penalty. There's a
Penalty.
bias
Right.
and there's a penalty, and it still exists today.
And we're going back to it with the full time back into the office. That's a whole other conversation I feel
Yeah,
very
for sure.
strongly about,
Yeah,
right?
agree.
But you just, and also though now trickle down from the culture, your group, I would like to think the sales group will support the person on their team that's having a rough time because guess what? Everybody on the team knows it. And
Yeah.
if they don't, then that team doesn't have trust for
Yes.
each other, right? So, you know, this is why, like in the police department, partners become really close friends. In the fire department, it's like a house. Now, having said all that, it's not your family. I disagree with
No,
that
I
because your
agree.
family
Yeah,
doesn't fire you when the numbers are down. But that
absolutely.
doesn't mean that you lack all humanity and that you don't
Yes.
care about the person. And years ago, I learned, I've helped the people I coach say this, listen, I feel terrible, but this person is not functioning well. You have a round peg trying to get into a square hole, like it's not working. So you have to say to them something like, I have to let you go so you can fulfill your greatest potential. And the
Yes.
person that's being let go knows it.
Hmm.
They know it, you
Yeah.
know, and there's a sense of relief. And that's why you let go with humanity, just like you promote with humanity, right? And integrity. It's like, hey, you have to
Hmm.
realize you're coming to this position now. You have these people you are responsible for. So you better bring your A game, you know, like getting
I
off a little
love,
tangent there.
no, I love that because I think, businesses are not families
They're not.
and they can be high performance teams who have humanity. And
Exactly. It's the empathy.
I love that. I love that. Dr. Patti Ann, thank you for making the time to be on the podcast today. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom, your experience, and the models that people can practically use to help them build great relationships and repair trust after they've built it and when they feel like it's broken. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.